Over the weekend, Nebraska Republicans debated whether to remove a handful of groups from its state executive board. That included the Nebraska Young Republicans and Nebraska Federation of Republican Women.
That effort failed, so the Nebraska GOP board will stay the same. Our Bella Caracta spoke with Republican and Democrat leaders about strategy to engage young people.
Both the Young Republicans and Young Democrats are already working for votes, from those age 18 on up to 40.
The Young Republicans are the ones doing most of the door knocking, most of the phone calls, showing up at the parades.
We're going to do a lot of social events this season to try to get them involved. We really just want to make it easy for young voters to connect with candidates that resonate with them so that it's easy for them to volunteer and come out to the polls.
It's more of an uphill battle for Nebraska Democrats. According to the most recent state registration numbers, the Democratic Party dropped 2 percentage points in its share of voters, whereas the Republican Party increased by a point since 2019. That still leaves more than 20% of the share as nonpartisan in Nebraska, a group these partisan leaders say they welcome.
We're happy to have nonpartisans as members of our voting body. Anybody who aligns with our values is welcome to come and hang out with us.
We have people of all different political perspectives. We have moderate Republicans, we have liberal Republicans, we have establishment Republicans, we have conservative Republicans. We're not going to do a litmus test for joining our organization.
Both leaders tell 6 News they're already busy supporting their own candidates for 2024. On your side in Omaha, Bella Caracta, 6 News.